As they've done for every other set, Pokegym posted their rulings for Stellar Crown, giving us a look at how certain cards will interact with each other. I've never covered a rulings post before, so why start now? Well, money, but also Stellar Crown has a few important rulings that you should know about before tagging me on Twitter saying PTCGL screwed them up. I mean, PTCGL will still probably find a way to screw them up, see my previous video for examples, but at least we'll know for sure what's the correct call. First up, we begin with a ruling that was just added on Friday involving Diancie. Yes, it's pronounced Diancie, not Diancie. Toyn Lei, who does a great job translating cards as soon as they're revealed in Japan, noticed something wrong with the English version of Diancie. Diffuse Reflection says, this attack does 40 damage for each special energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. But the Japanese version specified that it does 40 damage for each special energy card. This is a problem because based on this new wording, a double turbo energy or activated reversal energy on your opponent's side of the field would give you plus 80 and plus 120 damage respectively, whereas it should only be plus 40. Pokegym responded to this error by saying that the official ruling is, the damage is calculated based on the number of special energy cards, not the amount of energy the card provides. So a double turbo energy or activated reversal energy is still just plus 40 damage when it comes to Diancie, not plus 120. You can compare it with the Cinccino from Temporal Forces for an idea of what the card should have looked like in English. If you've ever heard the word errata and had no idea what it meant, basically it's a correction notice. Like when the newspaper said I had a foot fetish and I had to write in and say it was a foot appreciation. This wouldn't be the first time an English card required an errata either. Back in 2022, Garchomp from Brilliant Stars forgot to specify it was immune to damage and effect solely from your opponent's Pokemon, and instead made it seem like it was protected against damage and effects of attacks from all Pokemon. They quickly sent out an errata notice, so we might get one soon for Diancie as well. But that's not the end of the important rulings for Stellar Crown. One involves Crispin. Used for its full effect, Crispin puts a basic energy card from your deck into your hand, then attaches another basic energy of a different type to one of your Pokemon. Because of the way Crispin's effect is laid out, if you only grab one basic energy from your deck, you cannot attach it to one of your Pokemon. So you have to resolve Crispin's first effect of putting the energy into your hand first. Then, if you manage to get a second energy of a different type, you may attach it to a Pokemon. Otherwise, if you only get the one energy, Crispin's just an energy search. And what about Deluxe Bomb, the aspect very few people will actually use? Before I talk about it, you need to know how victory is calculated in the Pokemon trading card game. If you both take your final prize cards at the same time via knockout, you then check to see if both players have a bench Pokemon. If you have a bench Pokemon and your opponent doesn't, you win. If you both have a bench Pokemon, you go to sudden death. So for Deluxe Bomb, the question was raised. If we both have one prize card left and no bench Pokemon, if I take a knockout on my opponent's active who has a Deluxe Bomb attached, and my Pokemon has 100 hit points left, do they get to take a prize card? And the answer is yes. Even though you took a knockout, everything else in combat must be resolved before the game is considered finished. If you're confused, think of it like how taking a game-winning knockout with a low HP Roarmoon EX's Frenzied Gouging can still send you to sudden death. Continuing the A-Spec theme, Grand Tree has a lot of text, like a novel's length of text. Ultimately, the turn after a basic Pokemon comes into play, it can be evolved through Grand Tree, taking its Stage 1 directly from the deck. And if you evolved into that Stage 1, you can then evolve into the Stage 2. The ruling here should be fairly obvious, but just in case you had concerns, yes, you can use Grand Tree to evolve a basic into a Stage 1, even if no Stage 2 Pokemon exists. However, you can't use Grand Tree to search your deck if none of your Pokemon are known to evolve, just like how you can't use TM Evolution on Pokemon that are not known to evolve. For the last A-Spec covered in the rulings, we have a bit of an interesting one. It has to do with Wellspring Masked Ogerpon EX, which has already been the subject of an incorrect ruling on PTCGL in the past. That time, it was supposed to deal 20 less damage even when you shuffled a double turbo energy back into the deck. But Pokemon TCG Live messed up the steps and allowed it to deal full damage. But forget all that since it's fixed. Instead, pay attention to its Torrential Pump attack, and try to ignore the horrible hollow pattern on Sparkling Crystal. I don't know why they chose that image for its English reveal either, but I have to use it for posterity. Anyways, Sparkling Crystal reduces the attack cost of a Terra Pokemon by 1. However, Torrential Pump says you may shuffle 3 energy attached to this Pokemon into your deck to snipe 120 to a bench Pokemon. So you can launch Torrential Pump for a double turbo energy with Sparkling Crystal attached. And according to the ruling, yes, you can still activate Torrential Pump's secondary effect even if you only shuffle in a double turbo energy, as it's a case of doing as much as you can. They also point out that in the scenario of using a double turbo, Torrential Pump would only do 80 damage to the active and 100 to the bench because of double turbo's damage reduction. Now we move to Area 0 Underdepths, which, as you might expect, has a lot of nuance to it. So strap in because things are about to get bumpy. The first ruling pointed out in the compendium is helpful, though a bit confusing, and it'll get even more confusing when we look back at the rulings for previous bench expansion cards like Eternatus, VMAX, and Skyfield. For that first ruling, if your opponent uses an attack that KOs your active Terra Pokemon as well as 2 of your bench Pokemon, yet you have no other Terra Pokemon in play, yes, they still take prizes for those Pokemon on the bench. Even though Area 0 only expands your bench to 8 if you have a Terra Pokemon in play, this is another instance of having to resolve the attack first. That one's fairly easy to follow. But here's where it gets confusing, or at least hard to follow even for a genius like myself. Looking back at Eternatus, VMAX, and Skyfield for how to resolve other types of interactions, the main one has to do with devolving. The first one from 2020 has to do with De-Evolution Spray Z, an item card that you could use to devolve one of your own Pokemon. If you use De-Evolution Spray on your only Eternatus VMAX, but there's enough damage on it to knock out the Eternatus V underneath, what happens? If it's in the active spot, the Eternatus V is knocked out. But if that Eternatus V is on the bench, because an Eternatus VMAX is no longer on the field, you reduce your bench to 5 Pokemon first, meaning you can bump that Eternatus V on the bench about to be knocked out, denying the 2 prize cards. Sticking with the de-evolution theme, there was a Celebi from Unified Minds that could devolve one of your opponent's Pokemon. Since Eternatus VMAX only expanded your bench if all of your Pokemon were Dark-type, what would happen if they devolved one of your Dark Pokemon into a non-Dark-type Pokemon, thus nullifying Eternatus' ability? Well, you would first discard your bench down to 5, then check for a KO. As the ruling states, this means you could discard the newly devolved Pokemon to avoid a KO, even if Eternatus VMAX is the one being devolved. So what does this all mean for Area 0? Well, we have a little card called TM De-Evolution. Again, if I'm understanding correctly how devolving works, if your opponent uses De-Evolution on your lone evolved Terra Pokemon like Charizard EX, and it's on the bench, and either the Charmander or Charmeleon underneath would be knocked out, you can discard that Charmander or Charmeleon as part of the bench reduction, denying the KO. Yeah, my brain hurts trying to determine the correct order of operations of this, so if there's any Pokemon professors out there, feel free to share your insight in the comments. Because sometimes me no word good. Whatever the case, based on past experience, you can't trust Pokemon TCG Live to get the ruling correct. So if you're playing in an IRL tournament with packs or championship points on the line, make sure you call a judge and show them this video and tell them to like and subscribe. Because this type of interaction definitely isn't cut and dry on sea. But that's not the end of the Area 0 shenanigans. Remember what I said 2 seconds ago about Live messing up interactions? Well, they screwed up the order of operations regarding Roar Moon EX's Calamity Storm and Neutralization Zone, an issue that will be resolved soon. So what's the order of operations when it comes to an attack that removes Area 0 from play? Well, when the stadium is discarded during the attack, the bench size is reduced immediately before going any farther. So after promoting your new active Pokemon, there will be 4 Pokemon on your bench. There is also a ruling you can read about on screen regarding what happens if you discard Area 0 with the effect of a Pokemon's ability, but I can't see straight anymore, so I'm just going to move on. The compendium includes rulings for other Stellar Crown cards that won't see much, if any, play, so I'll skip those, but you can find the link in the description if you're curious. Instead, I'll quickly cover 2 more cards that have some potential, starting with Crabominable. The food prep ability states that attacks used by this Pokemon cost 1 colorless less each for each Kofu in your discard pile. So yes, if you have 3 Kofu in your discard, you can use TM Crisis Punch for free. Or if you have 1 Kofu in your discard pile, you can use TM's Evolution or De-Evolution for free. This is different than someone like Diplin from Twilight Master Raid, who specifically states that only an attack it has can be used twice. As for Duskull EX, which heals all damage from each of your evolved Pokemon, but discards all energy attached as a result, no, you can't pick and choose which evolved Pokemon are healed. If it was damaged and had energy on it, it's now fully healed and the energy's gone. Additionally, if the Fido you used to evolve into Duskull EX had damage counters on it, yes, that damage would be healed from Duskull as a result of its ability. Since Duskull has the same effect as Cheryl, we can look back at that card for another ruling. Let's say you use Radiant Eternatus to put a Kyurem VMAX directly into play, skipping the Kyurem V. Even though that Kyurem VMAX didn't evolve, it is still an evolution Pokemon, and yes, it would be healed. Okay, breathe, the info dump is over, and I'm sorry. There is one final piece of business though. Most handsome players like myself assume Duskull from Cosmic Eclipse will be banned ahead of Shrouded Fable, as it made Donk decks insanely powerful, able to win the game before their opponent could do anything. After all, the reason they banned Scoop Up Net was because of the interaction with Iron Valiant EX, which created easy donk scenarios. Yet Shrouded Fable came and went, and nothing. Turned out they were just doing a little bit of foreplay, because with Stellar Crown, the Duskull that can evolve on turn 1 is gone from Expanded. Well, more accurately, it won't be gone until September 27th, 2 weeks after Stellar Crown comes out. The reason for the delay is that cards from new sets don't become tournament legal until 2 weeks after launch, so they're just syncing up with the real-life format. Though Expanded is mostly a forgotten format, so it doesn't really matter. As for Duskull's ban on Pokemon TCG Live, the dev hasn't mentioned anything. Looking back at Scoop Up Net, they took an extra week to ban it. And yes, this is real, at the same time they banned Scoop Up Net, Twin Energy was also removed from Live because why not? They fixed it not too long after, but it does mean we're a finger slip away from every Duskull being banned in Live for no reason. Oh, and if you saw my tweet back in August about Brandon being banned in PTCGL out of nowhere, it was reinstated a little while after. No explanation was ever given for this snafu, but with Area 0 coming out in Stellar Crown, don't forget that you'll be able to draw up to 16 cards with Brandon. Yeah, that's kinda nuts. Alright, don't worry, we're done, you're safe. Let me know in the comments if I misinterpreted anything that has to do with the Stellar Crown rulings, or which cards you think PTCGL will code incorrectly. You can also tell me how much you hate me for making this video, because I hate myself too.